peaceful 12-hour. And I was in for a lot of surprises, having kids, and that was one of them, that the long, uninterrupted rest didn't always happen. Sometimes you lay them down and they're smiling, and you leave the room and they go, "Rah!" and they ask you to come back. And another one of the surprises, one of the ones I should have been more prepared for, or shouldn't have been so well prepared for, was that I didn't know hardly any songs. You know, you don't get a songbook out when you're singing in the dark to your baby to put them down for bed. You just have to know songs off the top of your head. And I'm a big music fan. I've listened to tons of music. I love music. And so I thought it'd be easy. I would just be full of songs. But I could hardly think of any. So what I ended up using was a lot of those lullabies, because they were sung to me and I learned them as a kid. And things you learn when you're young just kind of stick with you. And then I realized a lot of these lullabies are horrifying. They're like twisted, frightening images. You know, rockabye baby in the treetop. It's like a baby in a tree, rocking and falls down in the wind. It's like, who came up with that? You know, Three Blind Mice the other day. We were singing Three Blind Mice. This is this lady with a knife, like attacking little blind mice. It's horrifying. And so I didn't want to, instill these terrifying, violent images in the minds of my children. So I was trying to think of other songs, and I really struggled to do so. Mostly I had Beatles songs, which work. I mean, they work for me, they work for babies, everybody loves the Beatles. They're it. And some Taizé songs, which are this monastery in France that's kind of chants, and they're very simple, and you can repeat them again and again. And then some songs from church here, from our services, especially some of the ones recently that Yasmin has taught us. The other day, Karis was walking around the house just by herself singing, "Now I walk in liberty," which is the song we sing to lead the children into the children's time, and it just made my heart melt. I think she's walking around the house singing, "Now I walk in beauty, beauty is before me, beauty is behind me, beauty's all around me." There is something profound about the power of sound, the things we listen to give us comfort and to give us peace, to shift us emotionally. There is something mysterious about the power of music and sounds and silences to open something in our souls. So this month at Valley Mountain, we are talking about our different roots, and today we're talking about deep listening, which is one of our core values here. As we start this new year, it's easy for us to get excited about the new things in the world. You know, what's next? What do we want to do? What are our visions? And as this particular year starts, we might be thinking, how are we going to organize? What is the work that we have ahead of us? How are we going to resist fascism and kind of unbridled capitalism and a surveillance state out of control, and all the different things that we could kind of list? How are we going to organize ourselves to resist these things? We could become really fixated on what's next. But if we take a lesson from nature around us and from the trees around us, in the season of winter, before they get ready to grow, they have to strengthen their roots. And so this month we're talking about strengthening our roots so that we can be strong in whatever storms might come ahead of us. So all month long, we're looking at our different roots. So last Sunday we talked about grace, being rooted in grace. And I talked about this prayer rug that I have, but I didn't bring it in to show you. So today I'm showing off my prayer rug that I pray on every morning, many mornings, as often as I can. And this is the rug that I bought from this guy in Turkey after a 6-hour sales pitch. And I am so, like he said, you're going to thank me for the rest of your life if you buy this rug. And it turned out to be right. And I talked about how I tried to get discounts because there are all these imperfections in this thing. If you look really closely, it's not perfectly symmetrical. You can see here that it kind of goes in on the edges. You see how at the bottom it's not quite straight. It's like they ran out of fabric or something like that. And he says, this imperfection is how you know it's handmade. It's how you know it's real. You know, a factory rug is perfect. It looks like this. And it's not as quality. It's not going to last forever. It wasn't hand dyed. And so it sort of reminded me of the theology of grace, which is that in our imperfections, in our humanness, is where our beauty lies. And so today, as we think about our roots, when we think about deep listening, I wanted to help us understand a different dimension of deep listening. Usually at Valley Mountain, when we talk about deep listening, we talk about basically challenging ourselves in some way, to listen to things that we wouldn't normally listen to kind of listen to the voice of the Spirit calling us to take risks. So deep listening is often a value here at Valley Mountain about entering the mystery, which is a challenge. It's often a frightening thing. It's a good thing. It's something we should do. We should always recognize that we only have a fragment of the truth, and so we should be called to grow and to seek new things. But deep listening isn't only about the branches and the buds and the leaves and the stems. Deep listening is also about the roots. It's not only listening to the things we haven't heard yet, it's also listening to the things in our soul that we know to be true. The things that have helped us, that have sustained us, that have comforted and strengthened us throughout our lives. I think deep listening is a source of comfort. I want to get a little dictionary-ish with the word comfort, etymological, the word comfort, because often when I think of the word comfort and say I need some comfort, I think of being kind of having a tranquil pleasure, like not having any worries, just kind of tuning out and feeling good. And that's actually what the word comfort became ultimately kind of the way that we use it in modern society. Starting around the late 1700s, the word comfort started to describe a state of tranquil enjoyment, of being untroubled, of feeling pleasant, of kind of unplugging yourself from your worries. That's what comfort started to mean. In the 1800s, it started meaning being rich. I want to be comfortable. I want to have a lot of money. But what the word comfort originally meant, it comes from some Latin words, calm and fort. Anybody know what calm or con is?
Peace.
With?
Oh, calm.
Calm, the other kind of calm.
Yeah.
So calm, so the beginning of comfort is calm, C-O-M, and that's like C-O-M or C-O-N, like con, and calm is with. And then fort. Strength. So it is to be with strength. Or as a verb, to be with someone so that they have strength. Because comfort is not just a thing, it's a verb. It's something you can do for someone. I want to comfort you. I want you to comfort me. So it is to be with strength. It's not about necessarily unplugging in its roots. It's about finding the things that give you strength. In our world today, it is often very difficult to find silence, to find space, to figure out, to actually listen to those things that give us strength, that we know to be true in our souls, that we can rely on, depend on, and get nourishment from. And this isn't just true of the world in 2017. Actually, in 1917, a Russian author, a spiritual writer named Catherine de Doherty, wrote this: "In today's marketplaces, where there are constant demands on our whole person, we need silence. If we are to be always available, not only physically, but by empathy, sympathy, friendship, understanding, and boundless caritas," which is Latin for compassion and love. If we're to be available with those things, we need silence. To be able to give joyous, unflagging hospitality, not only of house and food, but of mind, heart, body, and soul, we need silence. So for over 100 years, our society has structured itself to squeeze out all the silences in our world, so that we're just going so fast that our roots don't have time to get nourishment, to grow, to deepen. Sometimes we get so focused on what's next and what's possible and what we don't have that we can't root ourselves in what we know to be true and what sustains us. Last week, talking about grace, we looked at the baptism story of Jesus, and then we looked at the temptations. Because right after he's baptized, he goes into the desert and he fasts and he gets tempted. And we looked at how the temptations of Jesus are kind of strange. They're about jumping off of a building and turning a rock into stone. They're not They're not forbidden desires. What we talked about is that these things, these temptations, are actually the temptations of doubting his own self-worth, of needing to prove himself, of needing to be special and amazing and above other people. And that's a temptation, a deeper temptation than a forbidden pleasure that all of us struggle with, to believe that our love depends upon being better than somebody else, about proving how good we are, rather than accepting love just because we are here. And so I was actually kind of telling this to somebody this past week, a little synopsis, because they weren't here and they're asking about it. And now we're going to start recording these and putting them on the website. And I'm really going to try to make that happen. Somebody was asking, well, that's neat. He overcame those temptations, because I have those temptations to not believe in my self-worth. How did he do it? And I was like, I don't know, he quoted the Bible. And that's what he does, right? The devil sort of tempts him with these things, can you do this? Can you show how great you are? Everybody thinks you're so great. Are you really so great? And then he quotes the Bible back at him. And I've always kind of ignored that part, because it's I guess in my mind I was treating Jesus as this sort of religious object instead of a religious subject who I can kind of relate to and learn from through the struggles of life and challenges. And it's well, he's not really tempted. He just kind of overcomes it, and he's a good debater and whatever. But if you think about it on a deeper level, what's a temptation if it doesn't actually challenge you? If you didn't actually have to struggle, then the story is very thin. There's not much to learn from it. So what was he doing when he was calling forth these scriptures? Well, one, a little historical understanding is that the devil's quoting these scriptures or whatever, some of which aren't actual scriptures, and he's kind of quoting them back to him. And this seems a little bit kind of maybe weird to us or silly, because people can yell a Bible at each other, and what does that do? But in that time, first recognize that Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. He was a Jewish rabbi. He's actually called rabbi by his followers a number of times in the Gospels, in the stories about Jesus. People would say, Rabbi, Rabbi, talking to Jesus. He was a Jew and he was a rabbi, and it's to the detriment of the Christians and the world history that we don't recognize. Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. And Jewish rabbis, especially at that time, were big on arguing. I think my rabbi friends today would say, not a lot has changed. Debate, arguing is embraced in the Jewish community as a rich way. It's not about proving superiority. It's about getting deep into their text, into their tradition. It's about really wrestling with these questions because you're so passionate about it. And so this exchange of scriptures is actually representative of a deep engagement with those scriptures. In fact, the Mishnah and the Talmud, if you've ever heard of these texts, are rabbinical texts from about 2,000 years ago, about the same time as the New Testament, shortly after, that are Jewish texts that are still extremely important in the Jewish tradition today. And they're almost entirely composed of debates between rabbis. Rabbi Akidah says this, and this other rabbi says that, and they go back and forth, and they go deeper and deeper on their journey into texts that they know in their souls. And so when Jesus is responding in this way, he's digging down into something that he had chewed on, that he had drank from, that he had rooted himself deeply and passionately and with discipline in. So he's not just overcoming these temptations about believing in his self-worth and about standing up to the power of oppression which was ahead of him and behind him. He was a Jew in an occupied culture. He was a child of persecution. He's able to respond to this because he has rooted himself deeply in something that he knows to be true. He says things like, we don't live by bread alone. Worship none of the God of love, and do not test God. He had rooted himself in these beliefs that he was already beloved, and that knowing that he could withstand any temptation, he could withstand any injustice. And so what is the comfort for you when the light grows dim and when the waves rise and when the windows and the doors of your souls shake and rattle in the storm? Where do you go? What are the words that live within you For Jesus, these words weren't just things on a page that he could spit back. These were living words that were sustaining to his soul and to his spirit and to his life, that he could pull out when he was struggling. What are those practices for you that can help you when you feel very deep underneath the shadows and the weight of the world? I think in this time, deep listening is a practice that we can engage in to find those things that we can trust, that we can root ourselves in. And we're going to have to be disciplined in our spiritual practice. Basically, the question is, what is your spiritual practice? And maybe not picking something brand new in your life. As we go into this year ahead, and we've got a lot of organizing and loving and celebrating and alternative vision casting to do, what is the thing that's going to sustain you, that's going to strengthen you when things don't go so easily and smoothly? What is your spiritual practice that you can commit to? For me, it's silence and prayer. And these mornings, and it's been so difficult with the little kids and stuff, so as many mornings as I can, I sit down on this rug, and I started to allow myself to spend at least 3 minutes. And I know that sounds so little, but it's something that I know that I can probably find 3 minutes. And then I try to do it more throughout the day and that kind of thing. But if I can just have 3 minutes of silence, then I can settle myself, I can root myself more deeply into things that I know to be true. So I'll sit on this rug, I'll usually read some scripture, because some of these ancient practices of the church and of our different spiritual traditions, they're there. We don't necessarily have to invent brand new things. It's cool if we want to, but there are some rich things of scripture reading, of prayer, of community, of singing. These things are already available to us. So I sit down and I read some scripture, and I take a singing bowl, or in my case, actually a singing bowl app on my phone. To be honest. I know, right? But it has a timer on it, and so every minute it dings, and it automatically dings. And I learned this. I spent some time in a Buddhist monastery, and they would ring the bowl like every 10 minutes because you start daydreaming and stuff, and then they bring the bowl and you go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be meditating, and then you sit up straight and do the thing. But I do that. I sit down and I bring this bowl. And the sound of the singing bowl settles me, and it roots me, and it helps me to live more deeply into the things that I know to be true, so that when the storms come, my roots are deep. And so I'm going to ask us together to spend 3 minutes in silence right now, finding that thing within you that you know to be true. Maybe you don't know what that is, and so what you're going to do, what I invite you to do in these 3 minutes, is just simply to sit and to find a single word that is a word of strength and comfort for you, and to just repeat that word with each out breath. It can be a silent breath, a silent repeating, but with each out breath, saying love or peace or God or Jesus or whatever that word that can give you strength and comfort is. So I'm going to invite us to spend 3 minutes together in a space of silence. And I challenge our youngest members to enjoy this experience, to try it on, because silence is for all ages. So, Natalie, you can stop recording. And